So I had a very different script on Dressup Darling since before the season even started. I've been a big fan of the manga for a while and I was gonna talk about why you should watch it. But since then, the anime came out, and despite having had a great reception, there was also a lot of backlash. And so I changed that video into one defending it from the criticism. But then again, as I was watching the show week by week, it just made me think of something that might be one of the biggest problems in anime. And don't expect this to be a fan service video, I've done that before and my opinion on it is still the same. If it doesn't get in the way of the story, I couldn't care less. Now, to get it out the way, I like the show. The issue I have is with adaptations themselves, and no, I'm not saying Clover Works didn't do a fantastic job. This is a 5-star production. But before we get to it, I'm gonna tell you what I like about My Dressup Darling, and then I'll get to the big issue I want to address when it comes to adaptations. So while Dressup Darling might seem like just another entry to the list of outgoing girl helps introverted guy get out of his shell anime, there's a lot that sets it apart. For one, the characters are actual characters. Gojo isn't a bland self-insert. Not only is he not into anime or games at all, dude is basically a 6'1" sitcom housewife, and I mean that in the best way possible. And Kitagawa is more than just a pretty face, which I know doesn't sound like a lot, but it's far more than what the average rom-com can say. And another good thing is how the scenarios that bring them closer are unique and tied to their characters. Their time together comes not from a list of tropes like aquarium date, school festival and all that, but from the overlap of their hobbies, which makes it a lot more personal. I also like how they're invested in their hobbies outside of their relationship, because this lets the show sometimes put romance in the back to focus on what these hobbies mean to them. Back to what I said, these are actual characters and not walking talking tropes. And since they're both likable on their own, we care more about their relationship than with bland self-insert and generic tsundere. And the last big plus for me is how the usual romance dynamic is flipped on its head. Most often in anime, or even romance in general, we see the girl take a supporting role, but this time around he's the one helping her achieve her dreams. Now, I still don't think it's as interesting a dynamic as something like Baby Steps or Bakuman, where both romantic leads are following their own dreams while supporting the other, but it's different enough to make it stand out. And the depth that was given to the characters, alongside the great production value, and all these other unique elements should be enough to elevate the source material to the highest tier of romance anime, right? Well, now is when I start talking about the issue that came to mind as I kept watching Dressup Darling, although it applies even more so to a lot of other shows. So hear me out. In the adaptation, they gave vastly more screen time to the fan service than in the manga. And look, I'm okay with fanservice, and I'm not gonna say that the stuff they added ruined Dressup Darling or anything like that. Also, this is the magazine where the manga is published. Ecchi was always gonna be a part of it, it's to be expected. However, let's look at the scene where Kitagawa first puts on a costume. In the anime, the scene has 40 seconds, yes 40 seconds, of her undressing and putting on the costume. In the manga, takes off shirt, tells him not to look, bang, she's already dressed up. There's no booty shot and there's no nape shot. And this is a general trend with the adaptation. In the anime, the fan service is around 1/5 of the runtime, yes, I counted, while in the manga it's only around 2 or 3 pages per chapter. And that's not even counting how much tamer the camera angles are in the manga. Now, why did they have to up the amount of fan service? It's not like it wasn't in the manga, but I don't get why they made it a bigger focus here. You see, my praise for the manga comes mostly from how much it stood out. Both its characters and setting were quite unique, and while ecchi is completely fine as an element of a bigger thing, as it was in the manga, once you start adding more of it, you are at the same time diluting everything else. And in no way is My Dressup Darling the biggest culprit of this. On the contrary, the show is great and the appeal of the manga is still there. But it got me thinking about just how many adaptations have been ruined by this kind of thing, just a more pronounced version. And the biggest culprit that comes to mind for me is my favorite manga series, Rosario Vampire. And I'm pretty sure any of you who have experienced both the anime and manga would agree. You see, Manga Rosario Vampire is a gothic battle shonen with rom-com and ecchi elements. And it's such a unique series. There's a wide cast of interesting characters and the arcs themselves are quite diverse, with some being almost detective stories, others all-out brawls, and some are just slice-of-life shenanigans. There's this balance of different elements that as a whole made for a great experience, even though the first few volumes have some trouble getting off the ground, as the author was still learning how to balance these different elements that made up the series' identity. But the anime stripped away all that made the manga unique, and not only that, but it's to the point where it became essentially just fanservice. The setting's still there, these characters look like the characters of Rosario Vampire, but they're not. Actually, they're barely characters at this point. They've become just vessels for the fanservice. And while the manga goes out of its way to cover up panty shots as to not break tension in the most important moments, the anime just fucked it all up. The manga uses fanservice in the downtime between plot points, but the anime just removed the plot for the sake of the other plot. And I mean that literally. The anime stops following the manga at all after only a few episodes. But I digress. The point of the video is just how many series got this kind of treatment in their adaptation. And look, I get that when it comes to Dressup Darling, this is blowing it way out of proportion, because that show did not take it too far. But the question is just how many did, and how many ended up ruining the reputation of their source material because of it. I'm not trying to wage a war on fanservice. Shit, I like me some DxD too, but shouldn't the source material dictate how much of it there should be? So, to sum it all up, My Dressup Darling is pretty good, but it probably could have been better if it didn't dilute itself with extra fanservice. And also, where do we draw the line between accentuating an element of a series and turning it into a completely new one? Anyways, I just wanted to put my thoughts out there, so tell me what you think in the comments below, and without further ado, I'm Ayvhel, signing out.